So, Lauren, hi, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
What made you get into NLP? In fact, let's first start. What is NLP?
What is NLP?
Yeah.
So NLP stands for Neuro-linguistic programming. So if we break it down, so neuro is basically the brain and the nervous system, which is all over the body because we've got nerves all over the body.
Mm-hmm.
Linguistic, so is your language, basically how we communicate with ourselves, the way that we talk to ourselves, the way that we talk to other people, how we interact with the world. And then programming basically means how we act on all of those things. So if you think of yourself as like a big supercomputer, a computer has to be programmed to act in a certain way.
Yeah.
So we as humans basically are like these massive supercomputers, and we've been programmed to be a certain way, to act a certain way. And we can use language to change the program by which we run on.
Oh, right.
Which can then change everything else. So it can change how we view ourselves, you know, our beliefs, our values, how we relate to other people, our perceptions of reality, all of that sort of stuff. So we can use NLP techniques it can be applied to basically any aspect of your life. So it was first coined by John Grinder and Richard Bandler. This was like back in the 70s. So what they did is they studied and got a lot of research from some of the best therapists in the world, and they basically created this model, this approach to understanding how we process information, and created NLP.
Oh, right, it's right.
So this was back in the 70s. So since then it's been improved and it's been built on.
Yeah.
And yeah, it can literally be applied to any aspect of your life. So it can be like sales, marketing, like modelling of excellent behaviour. So if you've got someone in your life and you're looking at them thinking, that's fantastic, I really want that, I want to know exactly how they did that, you can use NLP techniques to elicit someone's strategy of how they did that, model their excellent behaviour and get the exact same thing that they've got. It can be used in a coaching sense. So how do we help other people to get them from where they are now to where they want to be?
Yeah.
It's limitless, really.
That's
and
insane.
it's all about the mind, isn't it? So if you think the mind is such like an expansive thing, there is no limits really to the mind.
Yeah.
Only the limits that we create for ourselves.
Mate, 100%. 100%. It's like we place stuff in the way of our own path and then blame others for putting it there, when in actuality it's us that's put it there, you know?
Yeah, basically.
So is the primary premise of it like belief change?
Not just belief change. So if we think about it, so I'll explain to you what we call the communication model. So at any given time in our environment, it could be literally anything, the lights, the sound outside of this room, there is about 2 million bits per second of information happening around us at any given second. But we can't take in and process those 2 million bits per second. We can only process, I think it's something like 132 bits per second.
Right.
So how do we pick out the bits that are important to us, the stimuli in the environment, what's important to us? So we've got 5 main senses, haven't we? So the information comes into us, excuse me, and then we process that information through different filters. So like your beliefs, your values, your attitudes, meta programs, all these different like filtering systems. And as it goes through, this is all happening on like quite an unconscious level as well. Like we're not always aware that it happens, but as it's going through this filtering system, so like based on your memories, your previous experiences, we then draw meaning from this information that's coming in from outside.
Yeah.
That meaning that we give to this information then causes us to create an internal representation of reality, like an internal representation of what's going on the outside.
It's like our own personal subjective view.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So that's why you can never really have two people who experience life in the exact same way. Well, you could have two people, like me and you, we could experience the exact same thing. Like being in this room right now, we're in the same scenario, in the same external reality, but we could be perceiving it in completely different ways based on our internal representation, based on all those filtering, the meta model programs, everything else that's going on inside of us.
Yeah.
So that then causes us to have an internal state. So it could be like a negative emotional state, positive emotional state. That then determines our behavioural response.
Yeah.
And it's also directly linked to our physiology as well. So it's quite a lot of information, isn't it? It's a lot to like process and a lot to
loads.
take in.
It's loads. But what you've just said about the physiology, and I find that super interesting because when I'm doing my inner work, right, I'll be focusing mainly on my body, right? So what I've heard is that there's two approaches: there's top down and bottom up, right? So the top down is changing your thoughts and your belief systems and your values and your paradigms that you're working from in order to influence your body. And people do it, you know, there's a guy called Dr. Joe Dispenza. Don't know whether you've read any of his books, called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And this guy is insane. He was in a motorbike or a bicycle crash. He was doing something anyway, and he tore one of his discs or something in his spine, right? And he was paralyzed. And he said through physiotherapy and visualization, he visualized every single day his spine healing and totally healed.
I've heard
and
then
he was told he was never going to walk again, and now he's perfectly fine.
Because the unconscious mind, it has a blueprint for perfect health. When we're talking about like the unconscious mind and how it relates to our body and our physiology, it knows what to do. So your unconscious mind, it's that part of you that keeps you breathing at the night while you're asleep. It keeps your heart beating. It's always there. It's always been there. We're just not always aware of it. So if you can tap into that unconscious mind, it knows what to do.
And so,
you know,
what's the first step to tapping into the unconscious mind?
Good question. And I think it's about becoming aware of yourself initially. So have you ever found yourself doing something on a daily basis, something that you do every day, it's a habit, brushing your teeth before you leave to go to work, or you're driving somewhere and you're taking your normal route home, but you find yourself completely like you've zoned out, and then you get home and you realise, how did I even get home? Like I'm not aware that happened. So you're in a trance. That's what it is. You're basically in a trance state of mind. So your unconscious mind is doing all the work for you.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first way to tapping into...
To realise that you do have an unconscious mind and that it's working 24/7.
Exactly, and knowing that it's there. Like, we do things unconsciously all the time. Like, literally all the time. Like, you sit down to watch a programme on the telly, a television programme. You are being programmed.
I literally, right, I'll be in bed and I won't be on my phone, and the next minute I'll be on Instagram and I'll be like, how have I just ended up on Instagram and scrolling through that for 20 minutes? How did that...
Like, half an hour's passed and you're like,
You're like, I've watched 17 cat videos. I've watched 20 football highlights.
I was never a cat person. And then last year I got a kitten, completely fell in love with him. And all I do now, like in my spare time, I just sit on Instagram looking at cat videos. And I know it's bad for me. I know it's not helping me, but it's a way of switching off.
Yeah,
and it's a way of zoning out and like going into that trance state of mind where your unconscious mind just takes over, and you're just doing things
for sure.
Unconsciously.
And that's the thing. So, you know, it was Albert Einstein, was it, that came up with the quote, you can't do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. Or was it doing the same thing over?
If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get the same thing or something like that.
Yeah, or the definition of an insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Something like that. We'll Google it afterwards. We nearly got there. But obviously, everyone I know anyway wants to change in certain things, but often they very rarely do, including myself. You know, there's things that I want to change, and a lot of things I'm good at changing. There's other things which I still want to change, which no matter how much willpower I put forth to do it, staying there consistently and doing it, I still find it as a challenge. So what does NLP say about that? Is in you know, wanting to change certain behaviours that are unconscious to us and we just do automatically. And how do we bring them to be conscious and then to change them? So is we leave them alone and then we adopt new positive habits that are serving us.
So I think firstly we need to acknowledge that you've run on a programme which at one point worked for you, but now you're realising that programme, that pattern of behaviour, it's no longer working for you. So you're in this state of like, you're uncomfortable, you're dissatisfied with the results that you're getting, you're not happy with the way that you're feeling, so you're acknowledging something needs to change. Which is the first step to changing it, is being aware that you know something needs to change but you're not sure how. In NLP we have what we call like modalities. So we have visual, so it's when we see things. We have auditory, so hearing things, and we have kinesthetic, so it's feeling things, so emotions, feelings. Then we also have auditory digital, which is when we talk to ourselves. So it's that voice in the back of your head. So we also have what we call submodalities. So if I was to say to you now, can you picture in your mind you in a really productive state?
Yeah.
So you're in flow, you're doing you're smashing everything, you know, you're getting shit done basically, and you're feeling really positive about it. Is that what you is that the thing that you're looking for? Is that what you wanting to change?
What am I wanting to change?
Well, let's go back a minute, because I've just put an idea into your mind there. So let's go back. So you spoke about you're not getting the thing that you want to get, but you want to change something, but you're not sure what it is that you want to change. So
I'm trying to think, where am I feeling stifled in life that I think it'd be benefit? So, okay, for me, I'd say number one at the minute is diet.
Okay.
Right? I have a habit of doing really good for 3 weeks, right? Top notch. I'm the best dieter for 3 weeks. And then I go 2 weeks where I fall off track. And then I'll have to get back on and do really well for 3 weeks. But I can never stay consistent. Do you know what I mean? For 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 2 years. So I'd say that is my number one thing where I'd like to change at the minute.
Okay, so you know how it feels to be consistent.
Yeah.
You know how it feels to be on track, to be eating everything that you want to be eating, keeping up with your fitness and doing all those things of where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
When you think of yourself doing that, can you create a picture in your own mind?
Yeah.
Okay, what's it look like? Like, is it bright? Is it colourful? What does it feel like? Like, is there anyone there with you, or is it just you? Is there sounds involved? Is there a feeling involved? So you've created a picture in your mind.
It's very colourful.
Yeah.
Very colourful and very energetic.
Yeah.
And there's music playing, like dead happy music. I'm bouncing around the kitchen, cooking the healthiest dinner ever, and looking forward to tomorrow's dinner. Yeah.
Okay, so that's eliciting you like really positive feelings, hasn't it? Like, you feel great right now.
I feel on top of the world right now.
Yeah, exactly. And you know that you could go home tonight and cook that.
I'm gonna go.
You're gonna do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing tonight.
Boss. So, so in your mind, you created a picture, and it brought up all these feelings. You had the sounds and smells, everything else in there. So, you had a desired state there. Now, if I was to ask you to, in your mind, create a picture of what it's like when you're not feeling that, when you've gone to those 2 weeks where you've slipped off the whatever you've slipped off, and you know you're feeling a bit down because you're not on track and you're not doing what you really think you want to be doing, your nutrition's not the best, you're not in the gym, whatever it is, what's it look like in comparison to the other picture?
It's definitely nowhere near as colourful.
No. Does it feel compelling?
No.
What's the feeling?
Feeling sort of resistant.
Yeah.
You know?
So I can see in your physiology there that you've gone to another place.
Yeah.
Like, your whole body language changed. Your facial features changed.
That's insane, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just by imagination.
Yeah. Everything's
insane.
imagination, really, isn't it? But you've gone to a different place in your mind there to list a completely different scenario. So what we've done there is we've acknowledged that there are different sub-modalities to you being in certain states. So in the first picture, the sub-modalities were that it was really colourful and bright. You know, if you're thinking visual,
yeah,
it was colourful, it was bright, it was vibrant. The kinesthetic side to it was that you were feeling on top of the world. You were feeling like motivated and happy, and you were like, you know, couldn't wait to get home and eat the healthy food. So they're your submodalities for that positive desired state. The submodalities for the other one, for the undesired state, the negative picture. I don't know, I'm getting the feeling that it was a little bit grey and dim.
Yeah, it was grey, it was dim, it was rainy. It
didn't feel compelling. It was like... So they're your sub-modalities. This is what we, in NLP terms, we call sub-modalities.
Right.
So there's a technique that we can use to swap the sub-modalities around.
Okay.
So also with highly contextualised behaviours, we have what is called a swish pattern. So this can be used with, so highly contextualised behaviours like smoking, doing a certain thing that you don't want to be doing, like nail biting, or people who like pick the hair, pull the eyelashes out, things that really aren't good for us, but it's highly contextualized. You can use a swish pattern to essentially swap around the submodalities.
Oh, right, okay.
So if you think of yourself, so if I was to create a picture in my mind of me no longer like smoking, but if I made that really bright and colourful and vibrant, it's going to change something on an unconscious level, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's changing the neurology in your brain as well. You're literally creating new neural pathways in the brain.
Yeah. And is this one of... So is NLP similar to... you know, they say repetition is the mother of skill. And is NLP another thing where... Were you going for one session and be like that? Or... Because I've found for me personally, when I'm doing things, most of them require consistency. So if I'm working on one thing, I'll have to consistently come back to that thing until I find that it's resolved. Do you know what I mean? Is NLP similar to that, or is it like one session and then you can be totally good to go?
It can happen very quickly. It can. So, for example, if you think of phobias, so phobia is an extreme fear, isn't it? And phobias are actually created like that, really quick, really instantly, and it's happened on such an unconscious level. Like you wouldn't even know it's happened. Maybe you can recall an event or a time in your life where you feel like that's what caused it, but you won't not necessarily always remember the exact moment where it happened.
Yeah.
But if a phobia can be created that quickly, it can also be reversed that quickly.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's just about tapping into that part of your brain that the phobia is stored, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, as part of my training, we had to obviously as practicing and in the training, we had to undergo the techniques that we were learning about. And even just like being in a room of like, I think it was 6 people actually on the training, me included. Yeah. So it was quite an intense thing. Like, you know, it got really private and personal at times, and a lot of people got really emotional, and to see it firsthand happening, it was just insane. Like to see the effects that it can have on someone so quickly. Really powerful.
That's
really
insane.
Powerful. Yeah.
And you know what, right? I went to London to do a training in havening, right? It's this body-based somatic therapy for for people who are traumatized with PTSD. And it was a similar thing. It was a very small group. And we had to demonstrate, like, practice on other people, right? And loads of emotions were coming up. And I've just remembered then. But basically what that was you had to recall the event where you were traumatized, right? And like imagine that you were reliving it, but only for a second, right? And then you brought yourself to a positive state. Yeah. And I'm guessing, like, if you were talking in NLP, like, add the submodalities. So it'd be bright, you'd be walking up beautiful stairs, or you'd be walking through a beautiful forest. And at the same time, the person would be rubbing you, right? And that's the kinesthetic. Yeah, the kinesthetic. Yeah. And it was, what was it? I didn't carry on with this, to be honest with you, but I wish I would have. And you had to come up with a rating. I don't know whether this is anything to do with NLP, but you had to come up with a rating as to how intense it was beforehand, and then how intense it was afterwards. Yeah. And then once you get that from like a 10 down to a 2 or a 1, or even better, a 0, often people had amazing results where, like, they tapped into that part of the brain just for a second at first where the traumatization happened. Yeah. And then after pulling it down, that brain. And I've read, like, the science behind it. There's, like, it's about calcium and molecules and this and that. I was like, mate, I don't care about any of that.
You just want
let
results.
me rub you. But it was insane, though. Like, it was insane how fast it worked.
It can happen really quickly. It can. And I think that's the brilliance in NLP. If you think of, like, more classic traditional therapies like CBT or like person-centered counselling, you could be there for weeks and weeks. And I've heard the stories from people where they've accessed counselling or they've been under a CBT therapist for like a year or 2.
I've heard 4, 5, 6 years.
It makes me think, what is that person doing for you? We knew it was gonna happen.
Bad to fucking happen with it.
Should we pop it back in?
Oh, cheers.
A close up of the pen and it. Show them.
Alright, awesome.
Yeah, so we're talking about like CBT therapists and counsellors and persons, and I understand, like, even just talking about your problems is so helpful for some people. Like, we should all be talking about it. There's no reason why anyone should be sitting at home or feeling unhappy or dissatisfied with their life or struggling with their mental health. Like, there's no reason whatsoever why anyone should feel unable to talk about that, because we all have those problems. We all do.
100%.
You know, it's completely
100%.
normal, completely natural, but we don't have to sit there and suffer with it. So I understand, like, talking about it can really help people. But then when I hear stories where people have been under a CBT therapist or a person-centered counsellor for like 2 years and they don't really feel like they're getting anywhere, you know, they're not really helping themselves in any way, you know, I have to question what is happening.
It's true, right?
What's going on
it's
there?
true, right? And I find with just my personal belief in that is, I feel like when you've got a problem, right, it's not always to do with the mental side of things. It's about getting in touch with the part where you're actually feel. It's like if you're feeling grief, talking about the grief won't really help you until you actually allow yourself to cry.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like, right, do not think of a big pink elephant eating popcorns.
Really?
Just don't think about it.
Matey's chomping on that popcorn in my brain right now.
You're gonna think
and
about
he's watching
it, aren't you?
The Hobbit.
Yes. Can I join? But you're going to think about it, aren't you? So if you suppress that feeling, you try and push it away constantly, it's just going to come back stronger. Same thing with anxiety. I know a lot of people suffer with anxiety nowadays. I've been there, you know, I've been on medications for it. It got that bad at one point. I just wanted a quick fix. And this was a couple of years back, like when I was in uni, I was under a lot of stress. And, you know, I just wanted that quick fix, so I was on medication for it. Now I understand it can help symptoms, but it's not going to fix the problem. You need to get to the root cause of that problem.
And what does NLP say about anxiety?
It says that anxiety is your mind's way of saying, pay attention to something.
Yeah.
Something's going on here. Pay attention to
That's such a good point. That's such a good point.
Something's not right. Give it some attention. And I think that's what we all need to be doing when we're feeling anxious or feeling a little bit depressed. It's your mind's way of saying something's not right. So when you're when you notice that feeling arise, often what we do is we try and distract ourselves. We reach for the phone. We do something. We eat. We do anything we can to get away from that feeling, to escape it. But sometimes the best thing you can do is sit with it. Just sit on it, meditate on it. Allow it to come into you, because it's a part of you. It's in you. It's coming from you. You're gonna find the answers within.
Mate, it's so true. And like, emotions have so much information for us, so much like valuable information for us. You know what I mean? Like, I found when I'm feeling depressed, if I'm ever feeling depressed, instead of, like you said, a lot of people will turn to pills, or they'll turn to this, or they'll eat, or they'll do this. I find once you actually turn into it, and I was telling you earlier that I'm into being a child work, so I'll actually speak to my emotion as if it's a child, right? Yeah. And I'll say to it, what am I doing? Not what's Lauren doing, or James doing, or this person doing. Yeah. What am I doing that's causing that? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And then you will get answers.
I think that is such an important thing, and I think it's something that we don't really acknowledge. Not from my experience anyway. You know, I meet so many people on like a daily basis, especially where I work and stuff, who they constantly deflect and blame other people for how they feel. And I think it's a really hard pill to swallow, to understand and acknowledge that the only person responsible for your feelings is you.
100%.
It's only you.
100%.
So when you say like, they made me feel angry, no, they didn't. You made yourself feel angry based on your own interpretation of what they said.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's
I couldn't agree more.
That's a hard thing to acknowledge.
Oh,
really,
yeah,
isn't
because
it?
I've found people, myself included in the past, by the way, I definitely, like, I'm not clean of this. In the past, it definitely was. Yeah. People love playing the victim. Yeah. Right?
It's easier. It's easier, isn't it, to pass the blame and to project. You're just projecting your own insecurities.
Yeah, for sure.
Your own internal representation. You're projecting it onto the other person, blaming them and saying, well, I feel this way, so therefore it's your fault.
Yeah. And that, like, my favourite book, you know, The Presence Process that I was telling you about, he talks all about that. Like, that's the main premise of the book, is to how other people are just reflecting what's internally with you. Yeah. And he talks about his whole procedure of integrating that emotion is, he calls, let's say you said something to me that made me feel jealous, right? He calls you the messenger, right? Yeah. And you're the messenger delivering a message to me to go, here's where you feel jealous, bro, right? And then he says, don't shoot the messenger. So shooting the message is blaming you. So it's if I blamed you for making me feel jealous, right? So he's saying, don't pull a shotgun out and shoot the messenger by blaming them. Thank the messenger, like we were talking about earlier, and go, that's so interesting how I'm feeling. How she's just made me feel jealous there. Let's discover more about that. Do you know what I mean? And people will never get to that stage. And I remember going round and round in circles, right? When one person would make you feel a certain way, and then another person would make you feel the same way, and then you'd blame them. But
it's not really that person that's it's you
know what I mean?
making
Because you
yourself
find
feel that way.
It's a different person, but the emotion beneath it is exactly the same.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so that says something, right? That it's definitely not the person. And I find in relationships as well, people tend to go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And I reckon relationships often fail because people don't take responsibility for their own happiness in that relationship. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They expect this person to take responsibility for this person's happiness and vice versa. And I think if relationships came from, I'll make me happy for you and you make you happy for me, I find that's a way more stronger way of going towards it. Do you know what I mean?
So you're not codependent on that person then?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And now we've gone on to the topic of relationships. Let's
Oh my
keep
God.
going. Jesus. It's going to get dark in here in a second.
I think relationships are such a vital part of life. Like, who are we without other people?
Mm-hmm.
You're no one really. We need other people, don't we, to get by in life? And I think relationships is it's one of the topics where people most feel anguish and pain and sorrow and jealousy and all these like negative emotional states. And I think it comes down to like people generally, you know, we've never really been taught how to communicate properly. If you're like not happy or you're dissatisfied with something in a relationship, how do you communicate that in a way that the other person's really going to understand it? And I think that's something that I've found, like my communication skills, not just in my personal life, but in my work life as well. Like the patients that I work with, the results that I'm getting are a lot different now since doing my NLP training. So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
When I'm in a relationship, and it's, as I said, it's difficult in a relationship because you can't just have one person taking responsibility for themselves and the other person not. Do you know what I mean? It needs to be like a two-way thing.
Yeah.
But I've found what's helped me in relationships, right, is number one, taking full responsibility for my feelings, never blaming the other person. That doesn't mean you can't set your own boundaries and be assertive when you need to be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Which is a vital thing. It's important.
Yeah. And there's a great quote, right? This is an amazing book, right? Called this dude called Fleet Mall, right? And he went to jail for drug smuggling, and he went to jail for like 13 years or something mad like that. And whilst he was in jail, he studied Buddhism and spirituality and all that good stuff. And he's wrote this book. It's insane. Radical Responsibility. And there's a quote in it, and I love it, and I always quote it. And it says, the quote is, trust in God, but tether your own horse, right? And what he means is, trust in the goodness of yourself, right? And trust in the goodness of every single other person on the planet. But at the same time, don't be afraid to set boundaries. Because I believe every single person in the world, including myself, is essentially good, right? They just lose track of it through, I believe, childhood trauma is the main cause, you know, not getting your needs met properly in childhood. So I love that quote, and that's how I like to treat relationships, not just with an intimate partner, but even with business partners and family, is to trust that everyone's good. But at the same time, you got to be willing, when they are acting bad, they're not bad, but they're just acting bad. You know, you've got to be willing to set your boundaries then, you know. And I think that's super important to relationships because as someone who used to be quite a people pleaser, right, I find you've got two sides of the spectrum. You've got people pleasers, and then you got people who take full responsibility for themselves. And then you got narcissists, right? And the people pleasers only care, let's say me and you were in a relationship. If I'm a people pleaser, I'd only care about you being happy, right? Your happiness is everything to me, right?
And not yourself.
And not myself. I'm sacrificing myself totally for you. And then responsibility is my needs matter and your needs matter, right? We both matter. So let's win-win. Let's adventure this in a win-win situation. Do you know what I mean? And then you got narcissism, where you don't matter and you've just got to make me feel good. Do you know what I mean? And I think for relationships to work, it's about both partners sitting in that centre part
Yeah.
and caring about each other.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Equally.
There's so Mel Robbins, she is a coach. She's got her own TV show. She's like a bit of an everything woman, really, and
She's incredible.
I love her stuff. I love the way that she speaks, and how she describes herself. And she says relationships. There's either two things that a partner or both partners want in a relationship. So it's either they're looking for connection or they're looking for power. So if you've got two people in a relationship and both of them just want to connect, and that's all they're looking for is that connection, you're going to have a happy relationship. But if you've got one person who's looking for power in some way, or, you know, they're trying to like get one up over the other person, or they're trying to get a little bit of control, it's not going to work, isn't it? It's going to break down. So in a really simple way to put it, it's either connection or power. And I think if you ask yourself, like all the relationships that you've got in your life, not just romantic relationships, friendships, the relationship that you've got with your family, your parents, siblings, people that you work with, like what is the dynamic there? Like what is it that you are both looking for? Is it connection or is it power? And I think it's a really good question to ask ourselves, because it'll tell 100%. Us a lot about our intention.
Yeah, 100%.
I think one of the hardest things to do when it comes to other people is, so in NLP, touching on what you said before, in NLP we have this saying, the map is not the territory. People are not their behaviours. So what is going on the inside isn't necessarily what's going on the outside. So if someone's acting a certain way towards you, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are that way. It's just some way that it's like a performance. Yeah. But it's like an expression, isn't it? It's how they know how to express their emotions or whatever it is that they're feeling or thinking. And I've forgotten what I was talking about. It's just gone out.
It's good because I'm going to bring you back to something you said earlier. And something you said earlier that stuck in my head was, you said some negative behaviours that you adopt nowadays, they used to help you. Yeah. Right? And I genuinely believe that, you know, a lot of the times when we're children, a lot of us are great at, I find, repressing feelings that we don't want to feel. Mainly because in childhood, we didn't know, number one, we didn't know how to deal with them. Yeah. Right? If we didn't have a parent there when we were feeling that feeling, we didn't know how to deal with it. We didn't know how to be afraid on our own. We didn't know how to be angry on our own. We didn't know how to feel any of that on our own. So I found that scared us as children and we just push it away, right? I think that's number one as to why we hide away from it.
Also, I think it's got a lot to do with the teachers that you had in your life.
Well, that was going to be the second.
So if you, as a child, if you were taught that to express upset or hurt or anger, and you told off for that, you've then learned to suppress that emotion.
Mate, social conditioning, 100%.
So you've then learned
100%.
This is not a positive emotion. I'm not allowed to show it. Or I think with young men, not young men, all men, to be honest, with our culture and society, I know that it is changing, but I think with a lot of older generations, men typically, you know, are quite vulnerable in the sense that they're not really allowed to show their emotions, or they've been taught that you are weak for not, you know, if you show upset or anger. And I think that comes right down to childhood. So did your parents tell you that, you know, you're not allowed to show those emotions? You internalize that?
Yeah,
or on a whole spectrum of emotions, from positive to negative. You internalize all of it. You've then developed like a survival coping mechanism, a way of behaving. It's a survival thing, isn't it? What do I need to do in order to survive in this family, in order to get by, in order to be liked?
And that's why, you know, that's where that quote comes in, you know, trusting the goodness of all people, right? Because everyone is good. You can't look at a baby and say that baby's not good. You can't look at a baby and say that baby's not lovable. You can't look at a baby and go, that baby ain't valuable, you know. And everyone was one of them once, right? And it's only through social conditioning and then the beliefs that we've drawn about ourselves through other people and how we've interpreted things ourselves.
So if someone has really upset you or hurt you, or they've, I don't know, maybe they've punched you in the face or something, I don't know, something really bad, how would you then assume good intention from that person?
How would I assume good intention?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
So we're talking about people are good, aren't they? Innately, people are good. Generally, the majority of people on this planet want to do good.
Yeah.
So I think this is where it comes in. The map is not the territory. People are not their behaviours. Just because someone's behaved badly towards you doesn't mean that they are
100%. And that doesn't mean you got to let them behave badly towards you. Because that'd be unloving to them, right? To allow them to do that. And yourself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you can be assertive with someone, whilst at the same time not saying that they're a bad person. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it's more about just... I love the term self-responsibility, right? It's like my favourite term. I've got it on my wall and everything. Are you responsible today? And one thing also I found to note is when people are improving themselves, what helped me was don't try to be perfect. I'm not responsible all the time. I'm not patient all the time. No. I'm not joyful all the time. I'm not 100% free of blaming other people, right? No. But every day I say to myself, let's just be a little bit more today, right? Let's be more responsible today. Let's be, let's treat other people with a little bit more respect today, right? Do you know what I mean? And I think once you give yourself that permission to only just do it a little bit more, and I got this from, I went to film this amazing woman who's got like these best-selling books, and she does this in a bonding process. Our James came along with me. And we went to America to film her, and she is just insane. I felt when I seen her, I remember seeing it, and my legs just started trembling. She's like, me meeting her is like a little boy meeting Steven Gerrard, right? It was nuts. She's like 85-year-old woman was just like, hey, she came up and give me a big hug. But her words changed my whole life about 4 years ago when I started reading her books, and that's where I got the inner child thing from. And I've totally forgot where I'm going with this, but I got that thing from her. And she said, Paul, listen, don't try to be perfect at what I'm teaching you. Just try to be more at it today. Yeah. Right?
Because it's forming new healthier habits, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, as I said, repetition is the mother of skill again. And I found, for me, when building healthy habits, because I've done fairly well building healthy habits the last year. And I found for me, it's not so much doing it sporadically and doing it perfectly. It's doing it consistently and being okay that when you do it consistently, you don't do it so great. If you do it great. But if you don't, it's okay. Because the building habits I find is more about just showing up and doing it consistently. And you might, like the brain, I have no idea what any of that means, by the way, the brain, wiring and neurons. But I find when you do things consistently, your brain, it's like a baby standing up and sitting down, you know what I mean?
You're teaching yourself, you're rewiring yourself to be a certain way, aren't you? To be better. Yeah. You're conditioning yourself, basically, aren't you? Yeah. Learning, practicing. For sure.
And it's like, I've got a great quote thing on my phone. It's like, when a baby stands up 50 times and falls down 50 times, it doesn't think to itself, maybe this isn't for me.
Yeah, it just keeps doing it. Do you know what I mean?
It just keeps doing it. Yeah. But I want to stay on the topic of relationships for a bit.
Okay, cool.
I find this super, I love hearing about this stuff. Because like you said, relationships, life wouldn't be worth living if it wasn't, like you said, for the relationships we have with other people. And that doesn't have to just be romantic, but everyone. So one of my main things that I'm studying and trying to integrate into myself at the minute is being able to get my social skills and way of relating to other people, like, that much better. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So is there anything you'd like to talk about relationships? Any area? So
you're wanting to know how you can improve relationships, or?
Yeah.
I think it comes down to like connection, isn't it? Like what is that people want most? They want connection. Don't they? And at the core of a good relationship, people have a good connection and a good understanding of the other person, what their needs and wants are, whether you can support that, respect it, and then set your own boundaries and say, no, that's actually not for me. So, I mean, what is it that you really want to know?
I don't even know. I just love the topic of relationships and like,
do you think it's because you're in a relationship, you like to explore the idea more?
I think that's definitely, I mean, since I got into a relationship, 100%, like I started reading books, and I was reading a great book it's called Models by Mark Manson, right? He wrote the book he wrote the book that went there popular. What's it called? He's just got a new one out called Everything Is Fucked.
Right.
Mark, what's your book called, lad? Let me find this out, because I reckon you'll know it because it was everywhere. Mark Manson. And I'll tell you a funny story, right, as to how I got into this book originally. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Have you read that book?
The what? Oh yeah, I have. Yeah.
I still haven't read that book yet, but apparently it's insane.
I've seen that.
And I think the basic premise of that book is to learning to be okay with however you're feeling, not just the positives, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I got into this book called Models, and I'll show you the that's the front of it, and in the book he's like, I made that on fucking Photoshop, and I'm shit at Photoshop. But I got into that book because one of the reasons, right, why I got into self-development, and it's going to sound sleazy, but I like being honest, right, is I got into self-development because I'd go to town when I was like 18 years old, and I couldn't pull women. I just didn't have that confidence. I was an anxious kid, and I got into town, and I was like, I'd be there with me beer, and I'd be like, what's happening?
Paul, you are not describing you right now. I know you, and you're not like that.
Mate, that was me when I was 18, right?
Right, okay.
I promise you. I was in town, I was like... And so, this is actually going to be really interesting to talk about. So
you got into it so you could start pulling women?
Yeah.
Really?
That's why I got into self-development first. And there was this great thing called Real Social Dynamics on YouTube, right? And the thing is, right, I started getting into it, and my skills got better, and I got more confidence. But what I'll say is, I found I was learning things to say and ways to act and ways to perform. And, you know, yeah, I got successes off it. But I found at the end of it, change was the most important change I've felt was realising that I'm already perfect without needing to do anything to be that way. I felt pulling more women would make me feel better about myself, which it did for the Friday night. And then Saturday night, I wouldn't have a woman. And I'd be like, oh, what the hell? And then I'd go back to feeling anxious and jealous and insecure. And then the weekend after, I'd get another woman. And with guys, it's great to get that ego boost. I don't know whether it's the same with women, because social conditioning makes it different for women.
I think it's probably opposite for a woman. Yeah, it's probably like, I think the views around men and women and having like casual relationships, or like even being in relationships, it's risky. There's a lot more risk-taking behaviours involved in it.
100%.
And I think the perceptions that other people have for a woman, it's frowned upon.
Yeah, 100%.
Completely.
100%.
So, but it's nice to see that you're talking about it so openly.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I just this is the first time I've talked about why I got into self-development.
Really?
But yeah, so I wanted to get into it to get better.
Can I just say, right?
Hit me.
So in the world of NLP, there's a guy, and I can't remember his name, but I'm sure I can find it for you. There was a guy who was an NLP practitioner and trained in hypnotherapy, and what he was doing, basically, it was found out that he was using NLP techniques and hypnosis to pull women, and he was struck off. He couldn't practice it anymore.
Really? Yeah.
Because it's unethical, it's immoral.
Yeah, sure.
So it can be done. Certain techniques, like it can be used to, because it's in a way it can be used for the wrong reason. So it can be used. So
was he using them techniques on the women whilst he was?
Yeah.
Wow. So he's like hypnotising them.
Yes, basically to manipulate people. Yeah.
That is nuts.
Preying on vulnerable women who were obviously looking for help or guidance or support in some way. So they're already, in that vulnerable state of mind.
Wow.
Then he's swooped in and manipulated them, and
that's nuts. So... In the club and sleep.
That's basically.
I mean, I never made anyone sleep like that. But no, with me, it was more about when I first started getting better at it, right, and I started seeing results, and I was like, "It's right, P lad," and then.
I think what you were looking for really was confidence.
I was looking for validation. I think.
Right.
I was looking for validation because I didn't feel great about the person that I was, right? Because we all seem to have, or most of us seem to have, this deep-seated belief that inherently we're inadequate, right?
Do you think we're born with that? Or do you think we're taught
No, I don't think we're born with it at all. I don't think we're born with shame or jealousy or any of them. Because have you ever seen a kid that's ashamed of himself? I've never seen a child, a newborn
actually.
baby, who is ashamed of himself.
No.
Ever.
They've got no self-awareness, really, have they?
Yeah.
Until you get to a certain age.
Even like young kids who were like walking around, they'll walk around naked, they'll throw chocolate on the walls, do whatever the fuck they want. I know, best times of your life, right? I believe it's totally social conditioning, right?
Yeah.
That is to blame for, and not to blame because, you know, it's just the way it makes the world spin round. Do you know what I mean? So you can't blame it, but at the same time, you got to take responsibility for
and then we have to
healing
unlearn
it yourself.
the things that we've learned. Yeah.
And that's the thing. There's a great quote, and I can't remember what it fully is, but it's like you spend the first half of your life learning things, and then the second half of your life unlearning everything you learned.
Yeah.
But that was why anyway. I was like, I didn't feel great about the person that I was, just as me. You know what I mean? And as most people do, they define themselves by what they have and what they're doing and stuff like this, what job they have, what car they drive. One way I decided to do it was, let's pull good-looking women, and then I'll feel better about myself, right? So I would go out and I'd come up with the shittest chat-up lines, right? And then, but slowly but surely, I started being able to put on a lot, like a really confident facade, though. Underneath it,
fake it till you make it type of thing.
Fake it till you make it, and I think that's bullshit. Fake it till you make it, by the way.
Do you?
Yeah, to a certain extent, right? And I started getting results, and I felt great. You know, I'd get a woman back to ours, and I felt great. And then you'd message the lads, and the lads, we'd all have it. That's what lads do on group chats, by the way. You know, they send pictures of the women. Just in case you were wondering whether that's the thing we do. But the most important day came, I think, when I realised after doing that for like 3 years, and it got to the point where, again, I was like, the woman would leave, and then I'd feel great for that day, and then the next day I'd feel alone again, and I'd feel empty again, and then that's when I fell upon Margaret's work, right? And I read her first book called Healing Your Aloneness, right? And in the book she talks about how there's nothing outside of yourself that's going to fill you up permanently. Nothing. Not one thing, whether it's a car, a job, a house, a honey.
Because you're placing your happiness in something else, in a destiny.
Yeah,
on something
for sure.
else external to you, but really it's
100%.
You can feel happy right now if you really want to.
Mate, it's a choice, man.
Exactly.
It's a choice.
Yeah.
It's
you make that choice every single day.
And that's what
if you could go back, right, and like, how old were you? Like 18 something?
18. Yeah.
What would you tell that 18-year-old you now, knowing everything that you know now?
I'd tell him, bro, don't waste your time and just focus on yourself. Learn to love yourself first, and then once that love for yourself and your heart feels full, then the relationships that'll actually be, and it goes back to connection. You know, that was just for sex. It wasn't anything to do with connection. Do you know what I mean? Because the sex is a great form of validation for guys. Do you know what I mean? And I'd tell him, listen, you don't have to chase any of that. Chase yourself first, and then whoever's meant to fall into your life will totally fall into your life. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, I mean, I had loads of fun whilst I was doing it. Don't get me wrong. Loads of crazy nights out. It was awesome. But I probably wouldn't change it, because I feel like people have to go through them experiences of, you know, there's that thing of, honestly, talk about this, and it's like, people will say, like, money's not the root of all happiness. And I feel like the best way to prove that is to make money and then realise it yourself. Because you can hear people say it as many times as you want. You'd be like, fuck off, you can get a jet and just go to Jamaica or, you know, the Maldives. I found the best way to realise it is, you know, I've just got a brand new car and I felt no difference about myself. But I'm already feeling good about myself. So it's not necessarily there wasn't much to judge it off. Do you know what I mean? But
because you know that your happiness is not dependent on something.
100%.
Not
but
a material,
even the parts of myself that aren't feeling great, right? The car didn't solve them. Do you know what I mean?
No.
Them women didn't solve that. And I think you've got to go through them experiences to realise it for yourself. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rather than just taking someone's word for it. That's what I found for me personally anyway.
Lived experience does teach you something. And having your own experiences of being in that place, you know, all those memories and the lessons that you've learned, it sort of, it forms your beliefs and your attitudes to life and different topics and certain things. So again, you're literally creating all of those filters for all the information around you, all the experiences, all the people that you're interacting with will go through all those filters. Based on all of that, everything that you've ever been through, all the beliefs and attitudes, you'll then make inferences about what reality really is and how you're interacting with it, what's it mean. Yeah, happiness is not a destination. Definitely isn't.
For sure. And I like how you say happiness is a choice, because I fully believe it.
Yeah.
Fully believe it.
Is. Yeah.
Yeah, I fully believe it. And I find something I've been contemplating the last couple of days is I find we wait for other people to give us permission when we can feel good about ourselves, right?
I don't think I do that.
I found that was something that I was doing, right? So
we wait for other people to give us permission before we can feel happy about ourselves.
Yeah, and what I mean by that is we wait until we get applause from someone else, until we allow them feelings of feeling good to come up. You know what I mean? Or we wait until we've got a certain amount of likes, or we surpass the likes that we got on our last photo on Instagram, and then we give ourselves permission to go, oh, okay, yes, sick. And what I find funny is when you feel great, right? That emotion's already inside of you. You've just allowed the external event to trigger that inside you. So the last couple of days, I've been lying in bed, right? And I've been saying to myself, Paul, I give you full permission to feel fucking amazing about yourself now. And all of a sudden, them emotions just come. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like, you don't have to wait. And it's like, exactly like you said, it's a choice. You know what I mean? You just got to choose to allow it to occur now.
So I think that what you're touching on is a meta program, which we call self-reference or other reference.
Right.
So where do we get our references from? Where do we find validation? So we either get it from within us, so self-reference, based on, we're looking for evidence and the criteria to suggest that we've done a good job and we're allowed to feel good about ourselves, or we're going to look for external references and look for the evidence and the criteria somewhere else out there, or from someone else, to then give us that permission. So I think you're changing here, like something's happening within you, and you're changing.
Exactly.
So, like, for example, in like a work scenario, you might ask someone, well, how do you know that you've done a good job today? Someone might say, well, my boss said I did a really good job, or someone gave me really good feedback in work. But what if that person was to then say, actually, it wasn't that great? That person is likely to then go, well, I need to reassess what I did then, because it mustn't be good. Whereas someone who self-references is sure that it sort of relates to self-confidence as well. So someone who's self-referencing will find that criteria and the evidence from within themselves based on their own values, beliefs, memories, judgments, everything that comes from within them, which tends to generally be the more useful way of being, isn't it? So NLP, it's not just about helping better ourselves, but what's actually useful for us. How can we use NLP techniques to change ourselves in a way that's useful?
Mate, it's so interesting. It seems like NLP's just got everything.
It really does.
Everything. Everything really I've said, you relate it to how NLP works with that.
The inner child work, parts integration.
That's part of NLP, yeah?
Major NLP technique.
Really?
Yeah.
That's insane. Yeah. How long was your course for when you went down?
So the NLP, so there's different levels of being an NLP practitioner. So I'm NLP practitioner level, hoping to then become master practitioner.
Oh, okay. So
then after master practitioner, you have trainer and then master trainer, I think it is.
Oh, right, okay.
I think it is. So the NLP prac course that I did, it was 8 days, like really intense work. But it wasn't just the 8 days. There's like a lot of work that you've got to do before that. There's like a lot of audio books that you've got to listen to, a lot of written work. There's just loads of homework that you have to do and read books and stuff before you actually get onto the course. Then the course itself was 8 days. Quite long days as well, like really intense. Like you kind of like don't break the state, you're in it until the very end.
Really? What was that like? Did they go fast or slow?
Do you know what? I absolutely loved the experience of it. It was fascinating. It was like I was in a vortex for 8 days, literally in this like complete bubble of just NLP world. Like everything was NLP, and it was hypnotherapy as well. So I'm a trained hypnotherapist.
Oh, I did as well,
certified in timeline therapy as well. So we use hypnotherapy, timeline therapy with a lot of NLP techniques.
Oh, right.
In like a therapeutic sense to help
Yeah.
people, and a coaching sense as well.
There's a book I think called the 5-minute cure, is it? I think that's about timeline therapy.
Yeah.
But I heard it's so good.
Yeah.
Timeline therapy, like in hypnosis.
It is useful. It's particularly useful for getting rid of like negative emotional states.
Yeah.
So like what you talked about when you went down to, was it London, where you were working with PTSD people and you do that training where you take them back to a time where the event happened. Similar with timeline therapy, you're taking them back to like just before the event happened, and there's certain things that you do which basically it knocks out that neural pathway in the brain.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so it is really
Yeah,
interesting.
sounds very similar.
Yeah.
Sounds
but being
very
there
similar.
though for those 8 days, like you're just sort of like thrown into this like world, and I just absolutely loved it. It was fascinating.
That's insane.
Really
Well, I
fascinating.
can't believe how much you know.
But
It's insane.
To train in it though, to become an NLP practitioner, it's not just practicing on other people. You have it done on yourself. So you go through like this whole transformation in yourself. Like you're breaking down all your own limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
You know, all your fears, your anxieties, like shit you didn't even realise you had in you. Like it all comes to the surface.
Yeah.
It's really, really powerful. And then to watch it happening on other people, and for you to like see the results that you're getting for other people on the training, it's amazing. Like I really would recommend. I think it's not just useful for people who want to get rid of like limiting beliefs or want to get rid of anxiety. It can be used in literally any sense. So sales, marketing, business, making more money, like anything. You can literally apply it to anything.
That is
So useful.
insane, man. That is insane. And I haven't read it all, I don't think. And it was years ago by Richard Bandler. He's got a book. It's like a black cover. And it was super interesting, super interesting. I wish I I probably will after this. I'm gonna go home and carry on reading it. I'll be like, my son modality is Lauren. But yeah, it's insane. It's insane. I love the idea of NLP.
Yeah.
And it seems like that course is just made like, no doubt you can learn a lot from a book, but a course like that where it's such a such an intense.
Think one of the best ways if you wanna little doggy. Oh, do you know? I think if you want to help yourself overcome obstacles in your life, or you're fed up, you're feeling dissatisfied, whatever it might be, one of the best ways that you can help yourself is to educate yourself. Train in something that you know is going to help you. Not just so that you can go on to help other people, but if you can use that and practice it on yourself and be living proof that it actually works, you will see your life transform. Yeah. You will.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
For sure. And I know one thing for me was when I first got into self-development, I read so many books. I've got about 600 books on my Kindle, right? And I've read so many, but I didn't apply what any of them were saying.
That's the thing, Paul. Come on, you can read a million books, but unless you actually apply what you know, what are you doing?
Mate,
what are you doing?
100%. And I found it's a lot of people who fall into the idea that the next book will cure them. Just read the next book will cure them. And so I find I've stopped reading.
I'm terrible. I will hold my hands up. I will go into Waterstones and buy 3 or 4 books and then not read them.
Yeah.
I will.
I will.
Terrible. I really will.
Are these like self-development books, or are these fictional books?
Sorry, I did do that. I'm not doing that anymore.
What books are you reading at the minute?
At the moment, I'm not reading any book at the moment. Oh, I'm listening to an audiobook on Audible. I've recently discovered Audible. So I'm lazy.
Awesome, innit?
I'm lazy.
How great is Audible?
I do love the feel of a good book, and I do like it once I really get into it.
Are you a Kindle or paperback kind of girl?
I do like the feel
You like
of
the
a good book.
paperbacks?
Yeah, I do like a proper good book, but the reason why I'm listening to Audible a lot more recently is because I can do it on the go.
Yeah,
you know, if
yeah,
you're going
absolutely.
somewhere, throw earphones in, and then you can still do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, for sure.
The thing that I'm listening to at the moment is it's a book. What's it called? It's How the Pill Changes Everything. So it's more for females, really, but it's definitely good for males as well.
Is
if
it?
you're in a
Yeah.
relationship with a female, educate yourself. It's all about how the pill actually affects everything. How you perceive yourself, how you interact with people, it's all about your hormones and how that's changed everything for you.
Oh, right, wow.
Yeah, it's
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
But you're right, I think it's great for both parties
definitely,
to know, you know,
not just women.
what's going to happen with your woman when she's on that stuff, because we all know the hormones go a bit crazy. But yeah,
So like in the NLP world, we have this process called creating your own future.
right.
Like how do you design your own future? So I work for the NHS, and I work in a drug and alcohol detox unit.
Mm-hmm.
So I work with people who are living with drug and alcohol addictions and are in that process of recovering, basically. So I'm in a detox unit. I'm kind of like the middle man, really. We get them in, we detox them, and then either they go on to rehab or they'll go back out into the community.
Yeah.
And one of the main questions that I ask patients is, what are you doing after here? Where are you going to be after here? Where are you going to be a year from now? Where are you going to be a year from now?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know where you want to be a year from now? And often what I find is when you ask people, what do you actually want? People don't know.
Mm-hmm.
People don't really know what it is. Do you know what they don't want? Because they've already experienced that, and they don't like the negative feeling that it gives them. So
Mm-hmm.
people tend to run away from things that they don't like, but it's not really giving you any direction and purpose. So if you can think about what it is you actually really want in life, you can then start to work towards that, and it gives you a sense of purpose, it gives you a sense of direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think working with my patient group, I feel like a lot of them are a little bit lost. They don't really have like a sense of purpose or, you know, any direction. They're not really sure where they're going.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of the things that I like to do with the patients, is a process of like creating your own future. Like, where are you going to be a year from now? And I did this with a patient recently, and it was kind of like, it just happened in the moment, you know, we were just having a conversation, like really casual, and then it just sort of went down that route, and it did this process with him, and
Mm-hmm.
he was literally on top of the world. Like I was shocked. I couldn't believe like the results that I'd got for this person. Like, he was so made up. He knew exactly where he was going to be a year from now. He knew, you know, the time and date, what he was going to be doing, what he was going to be looking at, where he was going to be, who was going to be there. How did he know that it was that he would have already achieved it? Because you could see in his bank account there was a certain amount of money sitting in there.
Wow.
And I think that's one of the really useful things that NLP can do for us. It can teach us how to create goals and how to actually work towards them.
So is that a process of visualization, is it?
Yeah, we have to sort of visualize things, don't we, for the future? We have,
Yeah.
you know, we need to be able to sort of create a picture in our minds of where do you want to be like a year from now.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more to it than just that.
That's insane.
So it's making it like really like time specific. It's got to be compelling enough that you actually really want it. It's got to be realistic. There's got to be an evidence procedure. So like, how do you know that a month after you've already got what you wanted, how do you know you're going to have it?
Yeah. And what you said about like, that was awesome. How you said everyone knows what they don't want, but not everyone knows what they want. You know what I mean? And
which is a meta program, by the way.
is it? Yeah.
It's
So tell me about that.
We tend to be like either away from people or towards. So if you ask someone what do you want, they go, well, I don't really know what I want, but I know that I don't want this and I know I don't want that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you want? I don't know. So constantly we're always looking at what we don't want.
Mm-hmm.
So when we do that, we are consistently looking at all the negatives in our life.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're constantly looking at all the negatives in our life, remember, perception is projection. We're projecting our internal representation of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're constantly looking at all the negatives, that's all we're going to get back is negatives. And this is happening on such an unconscious level. A lot of the time we're not even aware that it's happening.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's how do we change that? How do we start to change ourselves so that we're actually getting the results that we want?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're getting results all the time. They might just not be the ones that we actually want.
Yeah.
So I think in the creating your own future process, you can sort of really like nail it down what it is that you want for your future, what it is that you want in your life.
Yeah.
You know, if you start to set yourself goals and decide and make choices, like I'm going to be here doing this, having all this by this time next year, everything else in between you'll figure out along the way.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to know exactly every single detail of what you're going to be doing.
Yeah,
but you need to know what it's going to be like when
just
you get
the end
there.
goal.
Yeah.
And I really like that. And the first time I became aware of how much how necessary it is to have a purpose and something that you want in life. I was reading a book called Psycho-Cybernetics, right? It's by this guy called Maxwell Maltz, and it was wrote in like 1960. And I'm sure he's got some NLP ideas in that, you know, because I know Tony
A lot.
Robbins
Do you know
takes
what?
a lot
A lot
from
of
him.
people do. Like, since doing my NLP prac course, listening to like podcasts and like watching people like Tony Robbins, like he's well known for it, but loads of people are NLP trained, or maybe not practitioners, but they've picked up on it and they're using it. Politicians use it all the time.
Do they? Yeah.
People in the media,
No way.
yeah, it's a big thing.
That's mad.
We all use it, but we're just not aware of it.
Just not aware that
Yeah.
we're using it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But one thing he said in the book, and one of his, he's got this program for like living a successful and happy life, right? And it's done by the acronyms of success, and S stands for sense of direction, right? And the analogy that he gave was having no sense of direction in life is like being on a bicycle and trying to keep it up.
Yeah.
Right.
Without riding it.
it. And I was like, that makes so much sense. And like when you haven't got a purpose and something you're heading towards in life, it is like being on a bicycle that you're not pedaling and trying to keep it up. Do you know what I mean? And I read that book about 3 years ago. And ever since then, it was that one sentence, and I was like, right, I've always got to have a sense of direction. And I think
then it comes down to the question, isn't it? How do you find your purpose? How do you know what your purpose? How do you know what it is that you really want in life?
For me, I mean, because I'm into mean child work, I'll speak to my emotions about it.
Yeah.
Right. And I find that your emotions will always speak to you and give you good answers if you're willing to listen to them. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes they won't give you answers. Sometimes it's just intuition that you sort of, it doesn't come to you with like thoughts or anything. Do you know what I mean? It'll just come to you, like, you know, when you feel expansive, like, and you think of something and you just feel expansive, you know, that's probably what you should be doing. Do you know what I mean?
You feel like it gives you energy.
Yeah, for
100%.
Yeah.
Mel Robbins, she says that another way of looking at like your passion in life or your purpose is what makes you feel energized. If you're doing something, you're in flow and you're thinking, I love this, I'm feeling energized, that's it. Like, that's the thing that you should be doing. Yeah. That's the thing that you should be going for.
Absolutely.
If you're getting up and going to work every single day and you're feeling completely dissatisfied, you're not happy, it's not really what you should be doing, is it?
Absolutely. And I think one of the big things that holds people back from them is the risk that it takes, do you know what I mean? And the fear. What would you say about, that's a good thing to move on to. What would you say about fear? Like, fear, it dominates everyone's life so much,
it
right?
Really does.
In so many different things.
Yeah.
Fear of rejection, fear of engulfment, fear of failure, fear of imperfection, fear of everything, right?
Really
There's so much things you can latch fear onto. What would the NLP say about fear? Yeah.
You can remove it. It has been done. It's been done with me as part of my training. I would not be sat here right now talking to you if I hadn't had the fear removed from me.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
So your anxiety of speaking...
Not even just that, like the whole process of me doing my NLP practitioner course, practicing it, putting it into real life situations in my personal life and then in my work life, and getting myself to a point of like, this is what I want to do. I wouldn't be sat here right now talking to you.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have picked up on all the stuff that I've been doing. But without removing that fear, I wouldn't have done any of it. So remember when we talked earlier about removing negative emotional states? So like anger, fear, hurt, sadness, guilt, they're all big major states, aren't they? And we can remove them. We all have things that hold us back. We all have limiting beliefs. You only know what you know, don't you?
Yeah.
You don't 100%. Know what you don't know.
100%.
So how do you know?
You don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. So how do you know if you have a belief that's holding you back? Listen to the way that you talk to yourself. I do it. I have a really good relationship with my mum, and every now and then, I don't live with her, but every now and then we'll pick up the phone and we'll be on the phone for like an hour or two, and we'll have a conversation like this basically, and you know, we'll say to each other, oh, that was a limiting belief, you know, and it's it's making yourself aware of how do you talk about yourself, how you interacting with the world, the language that we use, the things that we tell ourselves. Oh, you know, I can't do this or I can't do that. It's bullshit. Yeah,
and it's all lies. Like, it's all lies, and I think that's that's one of the main things in a bonding stuff that I do. It's exactly like that, right? So you'll speak to your emotions and see how you are treating your own self. As I said, and it goes back to taking full responsibility. So I'll ask my emotions, how am I treating you, or what am I telling you, or what am I doing, or what am I not doing for you that's making you feel this way? And then I get an answer from my emotions as to what I'm saying to it, right? And then I'll speak, because I think it's also important to treat your mind with compassion, right?
Yeah,
And Baron Katie is such a beautiful woman, right? She's got this thing called The Work. She looks like the most chilled out, enlightened person. I want to go and have tea with her and just chill and just sleep in hers for a week. And one of the things she says is to meet your thoughts with compassion and understanding, and question them with compassion and understanding, and then they'll let go of you rather than you trying to let go of them. Because I often find people who wrestle with the thoughts all day long. Do you know what I mean?
We beat ourselves up. We do, don't we? We have a habit of beating ourselves up and being unkind to ourselves when we're feeling a certain way, or and it kind of perpetuates that cycle, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You're keeping yourself stuck in that pattern of behaviour. That's
sure.
not helping you in any
and
way.
I think it's important to realise that there's good reasons why you're beating yourself up for it. Don't beat yourself up for beating yourself up. For the skeptics, right? A lot of people who are skeptical out there about things like hypnotherapy and stuff like that working.
Yeah.
Right? What would you say to those people about NLP?
About people who don't see like the benefit of it, or people who are skeptical that it works.
Yeah, just people who are skeptical that it works. And there's a lot of people who will be like, it's a placebo effect, mate. It's all the placebo effect. You know? What would you say to those people?
Well, they're right, aren't they? It is a placebo effect.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, all we have is our own thoughts. Mm-hmm. If you think yourself into a situation, you've only thought yourself into it. You can think yourself out of it. So yeah, they're right.
So in essence, it is all just a placebo effect, but you're just using that placebo effect consciously.
Life is just one big perception. We're just perceiving things, interacting with what we think is reality. Mm-hmm. And once you tap into that awareness, you can make your reality whatever you want it to be. You could be happy every single day if you wanted it to be, or you can choose to stay in. Actually, the thing that I would say to the skeptics is, you know what? Stay in your misery. Stay in your, you can fester in it. Stay in your misery. No.
Stay there, folks.
Stay there, folks. I think it's,
get yourself a Domino's.
But you can't really help someone unless they want to be helped.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I've found quite a lot working with addicts and helping people through recovery and through like real hardships, people who are in like real chaotic messes.
Yeah.
You can't really help someone if they don't want to be helped, if they don't want that change.
100%. Because often I find, and again, it's just everything I say is because I've demonstrated it and experienced it for myself. Do you know what I mean? I'd never say something where I hadn't experienced that same thing for myself and the benefits, or I hadn't been in that place and then got out of that place. So everything that I say is totally from my own self-development and where I've been to where I've came from. But what I've found is that when you don't want to change, right, there's often a payoff to the position that you're already in. A secret little satisfaction.
A secondary gain.
Right? A secondary gain.
Yeah.
Did you talk about that in NLP?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'd find that's so true.
If we're stuck in an unhealthy pattern of behaviour, why do we keep going back to that same pattern of behaviour? Like, what's the secondary gain? Mm-hmm. Why do you keep, picking up a drink when you know that you shouldn't? Why do you keep habitually doing things that you know are not helpful to you? Why do you keep going back to a relationship that you know is not good for you?
Yeah.
Why? Like, there's always a secondary gain to it. There's got to be some good with the bad. There's got to be a reason why we're holding on to it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what I've found is if I found that and even emotions, you can be holding on to emotions because there's a secondary gain to it. Resentment and blame and anger is like perfect examples. You can hold on to a resentment for fucking years, right? Because you feel because even though it doesn't feel good, there's a tiny part of yourself that's getting a satisfaction out of feeling that way. So I've found with me, when I was holding resentments in the past, I'd say to myself, I'd find the payoff and I'd be like, Paul, what's the payoff? Why are you holding on to this? And I find that it's very often when you want to do something, whether that's let go of emotion or anything else, it's not very often an incapacity to do so. It's more an unwillingness to do so, right? And I find that's one thing for me that I'll always try and remind myself of. If there's ever something I'm saying to myself, I can't do that, I say to myself, is it true that you can't do it, or is it truer that you won't do it? And I think once you can tell the difference there, and I read this in a book called Letting Go by David R. Hawkins, right? The book is incredible. And I read that about 10 times, right? And didn't take anything from it. And then on like the 11th time I read that, them 2 words stuck out like a sore thumb. Have you ever had that where you're reading a book multiple times?
Yeah.
And different things will point out to you?
Yeah.
It's as if like God's saying, yo,
meanings.
look at this part now, look at that part now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And those 2 words stood out to me, like I can't versus I won't. And I was like, fuck. Like all the things I've been telling myself in life that I can't do, it's actually, I can do them.
It's a limit.
It's that
belief,
I'm choosing not to. Do you know what I mean?
We on an unconscious level, we choose to believe in certain things. At one point in your life, you believed that you were 13. Do you believe you're 13 right now?
No, man.
No, because you chose not to believe in that, because you're looking for the evidence to suggest that that belief is not supported.
Yeah.
So we choose to believe certain things. So if you're choosing to believe that you can't do a certain thing, it's limiting you. So we call it a limiting belief. We all have them.
Yeah.
You know, we do. We express it every single day. But what it comes down to is once you realise it's just a limiting belief, and beliefs can be changed, that does turn into a won't.
And I think again, it's like, I think the very first step of self-development is to realise that you do have a choice. I think that's the very, very first step, is to realise that you can choose differently. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I always remind myself, if ever I'm feeling like stifled, or what's another word? Stifled or stagnant. One thing that I always remind myself of is whatever choice I make right now, right, I can make another choice in 1 second, like another second. Every single second you have the opportunity to make a new choice. Do you know what I mean? And I think once people remind themselves of that, it really frees yourself of feeling stagnant and feeling stuck. You know, because I think we've all been at them stages in our life where we've felt stuck. And my personal way that I've found myself out of that is to realise that you can make any choice you want to. And just because you made that choice 2 seconds ago doesn't mean you can't make another choice 3 seconds from now. Do you know what I mean?
You're only ever one decision away from a completely different life, aren't you?
Mate, 100%. 100%. Yeah. So I think realising that you've got a choice every single second of your life. And David Hawkins talks about this as well in his audio book. He says the major human occupation, the number one thing we are doing as humans, is making choices every single second.
But we do it on an unconscious
We
level.
often do it unconsciously, yeah.
We're not always mindful, are we? Completely 100% mindful of what we're doing?
No, definitely not.
I think it would be... It's not impossible, but imagine a life where every single second of the day you're consciously aware of everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
You never go into that trance state of mind.
I don't think you'd ever get a night's sleep, would you?
You wouldn't, would you?
You couldn't watch Netflix and actually just enjoy the film.
Yeah, you wouldn't. You'd just be like sitting there thinking, I'm sitting on the chair and I'm watching the TV. Like, you'd just never be able to shut off, would you? You just wouldn't.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think it's in those moments though when you do shut off and you let your mind wander and you go inside. I think that's when you become a lot more creative. Yeah. Ideas come to you.
Yeah.
And I think if you access and you tap into your unconscious mind and its wants and needs and desires, you will start to get different results. Yeah. Definitely.
And let's talk about creativity for a second. It's something that I'm so interested in, right? Because when I first got into the idea of how creativity is so important, I never used to feel like it was. And then I read a book, The Science of Being Great. It's called by the same guy, Wallace D. Wattles. And he talked about competitive versus creative mindset, right? And it's hard to break down because I can't fully remember it, but I just remember reading this book was the one thing that made me go, okay, I need to start thinking more creatively than competitively. Like, I find what I was doing beforehand was I was competing for things. I was competing to be better and more successful and more this and more that than other people. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And he talks about giving that up and just let it go. Like, let people do their shit and you do your shit, right? Yeah. And just embrace a creative mindset, right? where you just create. That's all you're focused on. You're not focusing on creating so as you can get better than this guy or better than that girl. You're just focused on creating for the sake of creation, right? And that's when I realized, fuck, like, creation's super powerful. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, in essence, we're all creating every single second of the day. Do you know what I mean? By like the thoughts and stuff that we're doing.
I think it's good to have a bit of competitiveness in you.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way that I think it's okay to compare yourself to other people, but just not to an extent where it's self-sabotage and it's getting yourself down, and you're literally coming from a place of insecurity. If you're going to compare yourself to other people constantly, you're never going to be happy with yourself. And it's that thing of you will then become stagnant again, or if all you're looking at is other people and comparing yourself to them and judging yourself against someone else, even if it's on a competitive level, you're coming from a place of lacking. What have I not got that person has got?
Yeah.
And when you're coming from that place, all you're ever going to see in your life is all the stuff that you don't have. You're working from a negative point of view. So again, with the creativity, when you're in that creative flow, in that creative mindset, you're working from an abundance point of view. You're looking at the things that you have got. We all have the resources available to us inside of us all the time.
Yeah.
We just don't always access it. We don't tap into it. We don't know that it's there. So as part of like a create your future process, it's, well, have you had or done this before? Do you know anyone who has? If you don't know the information, source it from other people, speak to people, model their excellent behaviour, find out what the information is that you need in order for you to get you from where you are now to where you want to be. But coming back to the creative thing, it is coming from that point of, I already have all the resources in me that I already need. I don't need to be looking outside, I don't need to be looking elsewhere. I don't need to be competing with other people. If I can just look inwards and be creative and find all those ideas from within myself, everything else will fall into place. You're going to see abundance everywhere. You're going to see positiveness everywhere else.
Yeah, for sure. That's such a good answer. I was just like hypnotized then, just listening to you. I was like, wow.
You went into trance.
Right, okay. I think we should wrap it up. I just want to ask one more question.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your thoughts on whether you call it God, whether you call it energy, whether you call it vibrations, whether you call it, spirit, whether you call it higher power? What's your thoughts on that? Like, for me, I like to call it my greatness, right? I don't call it God. I don't really resonate with the word God. But I believe that there's something bigger than us all, right? So I prefer to call it my greatness. Yeah. Right? Because, they all say, like, God is within you and the kingdom of heaven is within you, but God doesn't resonate with me. So I call it greatness. And when I'm doing my inner work, I'll often get in touch with that greatness, right? Yeah. And ask for its advice on what is best for me to do next. Yeah. And the love and action, and what do I need for me? Yeah. And what do I want? What do I truly, truly want that'll bring me joy? Do you know what I mean? What's your thoughts on that? Because I find it helps me. I do actually get answers from it. Yeah. And it's partly for me about learning to trust your imagination, right? And trust your intuition. Because I find intuition is very much that part of the universe working itself through you, right? And when you ignore your intuition, if you go in somewhere and you get a feeling that this is a bad place to be, right? I believe that's the part that's higher than all of us, right? But that we can tap into. What's your thoughts on that?
It's kind of like a spiritual topic, really, isn't it? Because, if we're talking about God or the universe or energies, soul, spirits, whatever you want to call it. I went through a phase in my life where I was like really spiritual, constantly looked to like the universe for answers and guidance, and it was self-soothing. It did help me. And I went through that whole thing of everything happens for a reason, which I do still believe to a certain extent, because I think on the journey that I've been on recently is that I'm learning to sit more on the core side of life rather than the effect. And I think the fault with believing that everything happens for a reason, or whatever's going to happen will happen, is that we then hand our power over to something else, and we lose it.
Yeah.
We're not holding on to our own individual power and our autonomy over what we can do. So I like to sit on the core side of life rather than the effect. But I understand that for a lot of people, it can be really useful to... I think it's just a way of... It's like an outwards way of looking in, isn't it? To look to the universe, to look for guidance from a higher power. But you know that information is not really coming from anywhere but within yourself.
Yeah.
It's coming from within you, isn't it? It's got to.
For sure.
It's got to.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, we're just projecting it onto something else, which is what I've realised. I used to do that an awful lot. You know, I used to believe in... I still do. I say used to. I still believe in these things. I still believe that we have a soul, that we are all energy, and energy can either be created or transferred, created or destroyed, only transferred. And that's something that you'll feel a lot in hypnotherapy, is a transference of energy. So as a hypnotherapist, I myself have to get into state in order to transfer that energy over to you.
Right.
You can walk into a room and feel the energy, can't you?
Yeah, 100%.
Not all the time, but you know, if you practice it in yourself and you're quite self-aware, I think if you're quite empathetic as well, if you walk into a room and it's quite tense, you'll notice the energy in the room. You know, we have this language that we talk all the time, these phrases that we say to ourselves and to other people, and there's got to be a meaning in that, I think. I don't even know what the question was now.
Neither do I was just hypnotised again.
Rambling, but yeah, no, I think we can use it to our advantage, definitely. Look into a higher power.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that we want to call it, whether it's
Yeah.
God, universe, spirits. But I've stepped away from that viewpoint a little bit more because I believe that all of those answers are just coming from within me anyway.
Yeah, and that's fully what I believe as well, you know. So when I refer to my greatness, it's like my greatness, the great part of myself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The part that isn't my ego, that wants to hold on to resentments and blame other people. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Right. Let's finish it with, what's the top? Throw this at you now, Laurie. What 3 pieces of advice, just off the top of your head, doesn't have to be anything thought out, would you give to people watching this, is to just start making incremental improvements in their life? What's the main 3 pieces of advice that you'd give, just off the top of your head?
Firstly, train yourself to become aware of yourself. I think a lot of people do dawdle through life like a zombie, living unconsciously. Yeah. And just okay, I'm gonna go do this. I'm going to go do this. And they're not really getting any satisfaction out of life. And I think the first step to changing that is to become aware of yourself. So become aware of your own thought processes, your own feelings, the way you're behaving. What is it that you're actually doing with your time? What is it that's happening in your life that's making you feel dissatisfied? Yeah. So become aware of that. You can train yourself to become aware. Mindfulness, it's like a huge movement now, isn't it? Yeah. You know,
and it's great how massive it's gone now, right? Meditation is all of a sudden like a cool thing to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's helpful. You know, it is really helpful. So become aware of yourself, firstly, and second of all, if you recognise that there is a desire in you to change, or you're feeling uncomfortable or dissatisfied, see that as a sign that something needs to change. Something's not right, something's not working for you. So what are you going to do about it? Are you just going to sit there and feel dissatisfied about it forever? Or are you actually going to do something? Who are you going to talk to? Are you going to reach out to someone? Are you going to educate yourself? Are you going to go to a class on something, a topic that you find interesting? Or is it a career change that you're looking for? Well, what is it that you're looking to do? Do you need to go back into school, education? Do you need extra training? Just do it. Sometimes it's the hardest thing, isn't it? Is actually just doing the things.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Final piece of advice as well. Practice gratitude.
Oh, that's a big one.
Practice gratitude as much as you can. Because when you do that, you come in from an abundance mindset. And like what we said earlier, perception is projection. So once we're projecting our internal representation of the world, you'll see it everywhere. So like with it is a bit like law of attraction, isn't it? You know, if all you're thinking is negative thoughts, that's all you're going to see on the outside is negative. But with gratitude, you are on a daily basis recognizing the things that you feel grateful for in your life, the stuff that you feel love and happiness with, compassion for. It really will change your life. I do it. I, on a daily basis, you know, think of what am I happy for today. Even if it's just a small thing, like
often it's the smaller things that are better.
Really,
you know?
And step into it as well. Like don't think logically about it and think, oh, you know, I'm happy that I've got food in my fridge to eat or whatever it is. Step into it, like what is that making you really like feel compassion and love and happiness? Like what are you really grateful for in life? Because that'll give you direction in life, that'll give you purpose. Yeah,
for sure. And I think again it goes back to consistency. There is I know I've been doing gratitude journaling now for a while, and it takes something off. Like gratitude is one of them great things where you can change your state instantly from gratitude, you know what I mean? But I also find that to get a more consistent state change from it, it does require consistency in, you know, actually whether you write it down or just think or pray about it at the end of the night. I find if you do it consistently, you will see like consistent improvements in your levels of overall just joy. I like the term joy, right? Because, you know, I feel like striving to be happy all the time is totally impractical. I think humans aren't meant to be happy all the time. Do you know what I mean? If you're seeing someone who's happy all the time, they fucking end up doing your head in, don't they? You ever seen that? Yeah, when they're just smiling, you're like, mate.
Hang on, I'm trying to think. Is there anyone in my life who's happy all the time? I don't think there is actually.
Mate, I don't think so. I don't think so. But I think joy is something to strive for. Where you're just at peace with like whether you feel bad, and you can feel bad without feeling bad about feeling bad. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit of a tongue twister like that, isn't it? But anyway, I don't know why I went on a tangent then, but gratitude is a great third one to finish it with.
So awareness, educating yourself, action as well. Take the action that you need to get yourself out of where you are into where you want to be, and gratitude.
Brilliant. You heard it here first, folks. Brilliant. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers, darling.